Ever since the release of the EOS R, Canon has been going all in on the new RF lens mount. So much so that they've actually announced that they are stopping development of new lenses for the EF mount. And even though the RF lineup is pretty slim at the moment, the lenses that have been released have been getting really good reviews. And today I want to focus on one of the most popular RF lenses, the 15-35 f2.8. This is essentially the replacement for the 16-35 2.8, but we'll talk more about that comparison in a second. The 15-35 in its own right is a downright incredible lens. So whether you do mostly video or photo, this is a really incredible lens. You're gonna get great results either way. Having a wide angle lens that opens up all the way to 2.8 is wonderful. It's not gonna give you the same blurry, shallow depth of field that like this lens is, the Sigma 24 at 1.4, but 2.8 is really nice, especially at that ultra wide 15mm field of view. And if you have something close to the lens, and luckily this has a very close focusing distance, it looks great. Your subject is nice and sharp, your background's nice and blurry. One of the reasons that I tend to prefer prime lenses is because even though they don't have variable focal lengths, they're really good at the one thing that they do, and I really like that. This lens is really good at everything that it does. So even though it is a zoom lens, every focal length from 15 to 35 is crystal sharp, tack sharp, I think they say on the online message boards. And the aperture of 2.8 is constant, so no matter what focal length you're at, you can keep this lens wide open at 2.8. It also has a built-in image stabilizer, which works pretty well if you're used to using stabilization on any of the EF series lenses. It's kind of the same as that, but the lens stabilization combined with the built-in electronic stabilization of the R series cameras makes it really possible to get some nice, smooth, handheld shots. In fact, this is one of those cases where the more that I use this lens, the more I like it. It's so easy to get really good looking results from it, whether it's photo or video. And honestly, I can't tell if it's just the lens being excellent or the EOS R being excellent. And realistically, it's probably a combination of the two. But this lens with this camera really delivers some incredibly impressive results. And it just seems like the more that I use it, the easier and easier it becomes to get great results, even if you're just sort of pointing the camera real quick and pointing the camera real quick and taking a quick click photo. It looks amazing. Like, the focus is so accurate, everything is so sharp, the colors look amazing. It's built really well. It's a little different than the old EF series lenses. These feel more metallic. This sort of has like almost like a different matte coating on it, but it's all metal. The RF mount, of course, is all metal. The switches feel really good. The zoom and focus rings are really smooth and they have a nice throw to them. And then because this is an RF series lens, you have a third ring, which, listen to that, which is the control ring. And so this is one of the perks of the RF system, is that you can have this assignable, customizable control ring. So you can choose what function this ring serves. And to be honest, the control ring is actually an area that I'm a little disappointed in. I was really excited for it and I thought I would be using it a lot, but I haven't really been using it because even though you can customize it, you are limited in the options that you have to assign to it. To set a function to the control ring, you just need to go into the fourth menu of the custom function menu, which is the orange camera setting, and then you can click on the customize dials option, and you'll have all the options to customize the different dials of the camera. What you'll notice though is for the control ring, you only really have the option to set shutter speed, aperture, and a few like exposure priority options, which is great, but for me, what I've noticed is a lot of those features already have designated controls on the camera. Yes, it sounds cool that this can control aperture, kind of like an old school manual lens or a cinema lens, but there's already a dial on the top back of the EOS R that controls aperture. It sounds neat that this can do shutter speed, but there's already a dial that controls shutter speed, just like on pretty much every camera for however long you can think. And then ISO, I think, is probably the most useful feature, I guess, because in order to adjust ISO on the EOS R, you have to click on the multifunction button and then turn the dial, which is kind of how it works on like basically every Canon camera for years and years and years. You push an ISO button and then turn the dial to adjust it. So by switching the control ring to do ISO, that means now instead of two things, a button and a dial, now you just have a dial, so it eliminates a little bit of friction, I guess. But I haven't found that to be super useful because, I mean, obviously, like, I don't have a bunch of RF series lenses, and so building the muscle memory of adjusting ISO this way and then switching out lenses and having to go back to the old way just isn't really efficient for me. So I think this is really cool, but my actual hope is that Canon will open up the options we have to assign to it in the future, maybe through a firmware update or something. And even though this is a ring on the lens, I would actually like to be able to use it to control non-lens related functions. Maybe something like audio, which sounds a little bit ridiculous, but as someone who films a lot of video, being able to just adjust the audio really accurately and really easily by just twisting this ring while filming would be kind of cool. It has, I'm sure you heard, it has this little clicking mechanism which makes it feel very precise. It's very nice to adjust. So while you're filming, it would be easy to just bump up your audio level, take down your audio level a little bit. Just giving the user more flexibility on what can be assigned to this ring, I think would be really beneficial, and I know I would really appreciate it. So that's my big gripe. I think that it's really cool, but it's not quite the game changer that it could be in its current form or iteration. Just noticed there's a little dust on this lens. Always good to have a microfiber cloth for cleaning lenses in a nice circular pattern. And speaking of, do you know what you call a bowl of tiny cereal? Microfiber. Anyway, so really you can't go wrong with the RF 15 to 35, but I think a question a lot of people are going to have is how does it compare to the 16 to 35 2.8, the EF lens that's been around for a long time and is pretty legendary for being high quality. And truthfully, I can say if you already have this lens, you probably don't need this lens unless you just really, really want all RF lenses. They're very similar in size and weight, although if you use the 16 to 35 on the EOS R, you do need to put the adapter, which makes it a little bit taller and bigger than the 15 to 35. Otherwise, they're very similar. The 16 to 35 does not have a built-in stabilizer, but it does have the little window to see your focal length. The 15 to 35 doesn't have that window anymore. And then this is sort of interesting. Neither lens has a totally internal zoom. So on the 16 to 35, when you zoom in and out, the front element doesn't go past the ring, but it does move in and out. Whereas on the 15 to 35, it actually does extend up and down. I'm a big fan of lenses that have fully internal zooms just because it makes life easier, especially if you're gonna ever use them on a gimbal. It doesn't throw off the balance, but it's just a difference I noticed between these two lenses. Also, something that's kind of interesting, the EF lenses have a circular rear element, whereas the RF lenses have a rectangular rear element. And really, I think that's more of a function of these being made for mirrorless cameras. This is basically exactly the size of the sensor that is sitting behind this lens. And in terms of price, the 16 to 35 usually retails for just under $2,000, while the 15 to 35 retails for about $2,300. So this is definitely more expensive. If you're spending $2,000 on a lens, maybe that other $300 isn't a deal breaker and you might want to just jump up to the more expensive version. I can say the 16 to 35 tends to go on sale more often, so you can probably get this for closer to maybe like $1,700 or $1,800. The 15 to 35 is still pretty new, so it doesn't go on sale as often. And for me, it is just too expensive. I rented this one for about 3 weeks so I could test it out for review. As much as I love it, I just can't afford a $2,300 lens at the moment. So in terms of price, the 16 to 35 is definitely the winner. And I know you've been seeing sample clips and everything, but let's compare these lenses in here right now, just so you have a better idea of what that looks like in an environment like this. Right now, I am filming with the Sigma 24mm 1.4 with a wide open aperture of 1.4. I'm gonna switch that lens out with the 15 to 35 at its widest aperture of 2.8. So this is the Sigma at 24, and this is the Canon 15 to 35 at 15mm 2.8. I did have to bump up the ISO from 125 to 500 just to try to keep the brightness about the same. But you can kind of see edge to edge, even at a very wide field of view. It's a really sharp lens 15 millimeters is significantly wider than 24 millimeters. And just for reference, here's that EF to RF adapter. And if I put that on the 16 to 35, it becomes a pretty big, beefy lens. So there is a difference in size if you're using the EF one with an RF series camera. And a question that you might have if you're trying to choose between these two lenses is what really is the difference between 15 and 16 millimeters. So let's switch it out. Let's put this adapter back on here. And now let's switch out the 15 to 35 with the 16 to 35. So this is 15 millimeters and this is 16 millimeters. So a little bit of a difference, but probably not like a total deal breaker. I don't think that 1 millimeter of focal length is the reason that you would want to get the 15 to 35 over the 16 to 35, but this is what it looks like in comparison. So let's switch back to the 15 to 35. So in the end, is this the right lens for you? Obviously, that's always a personal decision. I think that if you're somebody who has only R series cameras and RF series lenses, it's a great lens. If you want to mix it with EF cameras, it doesn't make any sense because while Canon does have an EF to RF adapter, they don't have an RF to EF adapter. They don't have the other one. So you can use EF lenses with R series cameras, but you can't use RF series lenses with EF series cameras. So depends on which cameras you have. If you only have R series cameras, it totally makes sense to stick with RF series lenses. The EF mount has been around and been supported for decades, so there's a good chance that if you buy an RF lens, even though it's a little more expensive, or a lot more expensive, that it's something you're gonna be able to keep and use for many, many years to come, probably throughout many different camera bodies. Your lenses tend to stick around a lot longer. The 15 to 35 is great for video. It's a really popular YouTube lens because it's so wide. So if you do any kind of vlogging or YouTube videos or you're filming in smaller spaces, it's great. If you do photography, it's a really good lens for landscapes. It's really great for real estate because, I mean, you can see, you can get wide field of view of rooms and spaces and things like that. So it's a very versatile lens. My only two critiques of it really are the control ring not being as customizable as I would like it to be, and the price, because it is really, really expensive. It's super new, it's super high tech, it's a high quality lens. I know that's going to come at a price, but I wish those RF prices came down just a little bit, and I'm sure that they will over time. But if you're okay with the price, it's really hard to go wrong with this lens, and I would definitely recommend it. Otherwise, you can stick with EF series lenses and use an adapter. That's kind of the route I've been going, so I can use lenses with my EOS R and my 6D Mark II. I personally love the RF series lenses, even though I don't own one of my own yet, and I love the R series cameras. If you want to know more or you're interested in learning more about the Canon R series, I did put together a playlist of a few videos that I've made all about the EOS R and some lenses and updates and things like that. So check that out, and I will see you over in one of those videos.